courthouse the other day in the hallway. You're singing "Oh Happy Day."
One word prayer. Justice, where are you?
And welcome to Justice Served TV. Michael Bryant here.
And I'm Linda Kenny Bodden here in New York City.
How you doing? How's it
I'm
going?
doing great. I'm doing great. I haven't seen you since just a couple hours.
It's so long. It's been so long. Yeah. Okay. Well, you know,
Yeah, we have
never
lots
too
to
much
talk
of a good
about.
thing.
Lots to talk about, but
Yes.
a very special guest. I mean, when I say very special, I mean like very, 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 very,
Like all
very
caps.
special.
That's all
Like
caps.
all caps. Like
Okay.
even the way I type I would get it right, you know. But I will let you introduce our special
Well,
guest.
I think all I have to do is say it's Fani Willis's worst nightmare, and I think people then absolutely know who we're talking about. But just in case anybody's wondering, there she is, Ashley Merchant, attorney extraordinaire. She and her husband giving hell to all of Fulton County in a good way. So welcome. It's always nice to have you on.
Good to see you. Thank you so much. Such a good introduction.
Oh,
All true.
You're a great attorney. I mean, I remember when we were on Law and Crime and you were doing a couple other cases, and I kept saying you were like the best attorney ever, right? You know me. I've been a big fan and promoter of yours. But before we actually ask you about your case, I do have a question.
Yeah.
Have you gotten the call from Luigi yet?
Oh my gosh. No. I saw that on the news and I was like, oh, I wonder who you always wonder, like, is it, whose name is going to pop up in the news as representing them? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, if you do, we'll let you know. We'll let us know.
Oh, my paralegal keeps close track of those things. Should be very excited.
Very interesting. I just walked the scene again this morning. I live a block away, so all the cameras are gone. Everyone's like, there's people walking by. I'm sure if you shoved a microphone in their face and said, "Did you know that somebody died right here a week ago?" They'd probably say, "Where?"
Wow.
Crazy,
yep.
Man.
It is. It's a story that's it's gone just crazy, and we're just beginning to dip our toe into this thing. I'm afraid. Yeah, I've seen stuff. I just saw something online. People were comparing the eyebrows because he does have very prominent eyebrows. The suspect, and they were using freeze frames of the variant surveillance and showing. See, that's more like a unibrow, and his are more like
Are we going to see an expert in eyebrow identification?
Wait a minute. I think you got something there. I think there's an expertise that can be mined there.
I have no doubt if someone thinks that they can get a conviction off of that, someone will go. If you look at what the experts did in YSL, someone is going to go watch social media channels on eyebrow identification, and we're going to see an expert in eyebrow identification.
Yeah, so
you're absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely.
What is your profession? Oh, an eyebrow threader. Okay, so here's some various photos. Qualified. I think that passes the Dolbear standard. I call it the Dolbear standard.
Dolbear.
Yeah,
we have that argument all the time.
I know. Okay, so there's so much to talk about, but let's kind of start and work backwards. Now it's been roughly, let me check my notes here, 6 weeks since you got the order in the court against Fani Willis and the DA's department. Again, we're talking Fulton County. We're talking documents you were trying to get to support or really investigate where public funds went in connection with the hiring and employment of Nathan Wade, her special prosecutor in the Donald Trump interference case. Am I got that right? Pretty much. Okay, yeah. So they basically stonewalled you on a Freedom of Information Act request, and you said nah, and you went in and went to court to fight them on it, and it was late October. The court agreed with you. And so I'm sure you're just drowning in all the documents she's provided.
Oh, right. I haven't received one. I haven't received anything. And I don't know if you've seen in the news, there's another open records lawsuit filed by someone else, a judicial watchdog group in DC.
Freedom Watch.
Yeah, yes, Judicial Watch, something like that, who's really about transparency, I guess, does these open records. And so they hired a lawyer here in Georgia. And so I've been talking with that lawyer. They got a default judgment. I mean, it's crazy. They did an open records request in August, I think, last August for documents. The response from Dexter Bond was no responsive documents exist. Yeah. So they ended up having to sue, and they didn't even get a response in their lawsuit. That's what the craziest thing. I can't even, if I was a Fulton County taxpayer, I'm so glad I don't live in Fulton County right now, because I would want to sue them for malpractice. So they didn't respond. I mean, she's civilly sued for this open records request, and they did not even respond. So they got a default judgment. They get the default. You have like a certain amount of time to pay $200 to open the default. And for those who don't know, I mean, a default is like, if I sue you and you don't say anything, then you lose, you know? So she lost because she didn't even respond. And so now they're ordered to give the documents, and now they're actually finally doing the search for the open records. And they're saying, oh, wait, actually we do have documents, but they're privileged.
Oh, they are saying that. Okay, so there's three cases. There's three cases. And yours on the Trump-related RICO lawsuit, Judicial Watch on the watchdog, and then we seem to have lost Michael Bryan here. And the third one, if I recall, is the legislature who argued before the appellate courts the other day. So there's three actions against Fani Willis that she has not responded to. Do I have that right?
You have that right. You have that right. She is just flipping the middle finger, I think, to anybody and their mother who wants to use the legal process to dare to have her answer any questions. It's insane. Yeah, so she's not appearing to Senate. That third one you're talking about, trying to quash the subpoena that the Georgia Senate sent to her. There's no ruling on that. But then, you know, she lost our open records. She lost the other open records. And now it's incredible to me that a year ago, in that open records, they said, actually a year and a half ago, said, we don't have any documents. And now they're like, oh, yeah, actually, we do have documents. They're just privileged.
But they're privileged. Okay. Surprise. Well.
It's how she continues to get away with this is beyond me. One of her jobs is to respond to open records. I don't know how our attorney general is not doing something more. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, I have a sophisticated, very well thought out, deep question, a legal question here for you. Okay. What the hell is wrong with this woman? I mean, come on.
I know. I think it comes down to, you know, and it's funny, John and I had that conversation yesterday when she said, you know, again, pound sand, I'm not giving you any documents. I think she just thinks nobody is going to be able to touch her. And, you know, it's this attitude that I don't have any accountability. Nobody can touch me. And if you do, I'm going to object. I'm going to hide, you know, like, when is it going to stop? Who is actually going to hold her accountable? I can say it's incredibly frustrating, though, because it just keeps on. And, you know, I'm afraid that maybe she's pissed off the wrong judge now, you know, with this default judgment, and hopefully he's going to hold her feet to the fire, because someone's going to have to.
That's Judge McBurney, right? In the Freedom Judicial Watch. Is that the same judge that you have in your case, or are they different judges?
Okay, so that's an interesting twist. So Judge McBurney, if you go back to when she had the special purpose grand jury and she was investigating the Trump case before she indicted Trump, I don't know if you remember, there was a guy named Burt Jones who was one of the electors. He was running for lieutenant governor. He is currently Georgia's lieutenant governor. Fani hosted a fundraiser for his opponent, and she got disqualified from prosecuting him. That was Judge McBurney. And Judge McBurney wrote a scathing order saying, basically, that was stupid. You shouldn't have done that. I'm disqualifying you. So Burt Jones' case, she was disqualified, and the oversight council dismissed the charges. So
so he's the same judge that's now on the Freedom Watch. It's Fulton County, I assume? It's same division, County. Or how do they get assigned? How does that get assigned?
Fulton County, it's a random wheel how they get assigned. So, you know, luck that got the same judge again. But I think it's interesting that they have that judge, because he's definitely familiar with it.
Wow.
Is that Tom Fenton? Is that the Tom Fenton case?
Yes, Tom Fenton, I think, was the plaintiff. Yeah. So I think so Judge McBurney was the judge that sat over the special purpose grand jury. So he was the one that, you know, when they had that special purpose grand jury for the Trump case, doing the investigation, he's the one that sat over that. So, you know, he's the one that's now got the open records.
Yeah. Now remind everybody who your client is in the Trump case, the Trump associated election interference case.
So my client's name is Michael Roman, and he was Trump's first campaign, the 2020 campaign. Well, actually, I guess second campaign, but the 2020 campaign, he was the election day chairperson. So he was sort of the logistics guy for election day events. A campaign worker, a campaign executive, coordinated all the election day efforts. But because of that, he was indicted in the Georgia RICO case, where they claimed that he helped coordinate the alternate electors.
Okay,
so that's how he got wrapped up in.
And then how many co-defendants are in the case besides Mr. Roman and soon to be President Trump?
I think there's a dozen left. A couple of them took pleas, but one of the ones that took a plea actually just filed last week to try and undo his plea. So the lawyer from Harvard, Chesbrough, he's one of the ones that took a plea early on. He filed that speedy trial demand. And so his was one of the first cases that pled, got probation, but now he is asking for that to be undone.
Oh, what do you think the chances of that are?
I think he could actually win, because part of his reasoning is that the judge has since that time dismissed certain counts of the indictment that he pled guilty to. So I think he's got a shot out.
And just 2 days ago, maybe 3 days ago, what is today? Today's the 11th already, is that right?
11th, right.
I think it was on the 4th that the Trump folks filed their motion to dismiss based on, January 20th, he kind of becomes the president, and there's the immunity issue. What do you think the likelihood of that is?
Oh, I think it's a strong likelihood. I mean, it seems. I don't understand why they're arguing that they can still prosecute him. Like, it just seems insane to me. I mean, I know other people want him prosecuted so bad that they sort of forget. I mean, he's going to be our president, whether people are happy about it or not. He's going to be our president. Can you imagine how that undermines us on the world stage if we have a county prosecutor prosecuting him for a criminal offense while he is the leader of the free world? I mean, put your politics aside. That is not good.
Yeah.
Well, we have the same kind of issue here in New York. The question is whether he's due for sentencing, and the judge has actually delayed that till after he is no longer president. But there's going to be obviously motions to dismiss it all. And we all know where this is going with the immunity ruling on the U.S. Supreme Court, especially your case where he's the co-defendant. Now, if they do dismiss him, what is the likelihood of this whole case going down? Or do you think that, because I know you would win in a trial. I mean, I don't have any doubts about that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, let's do a trial.
I know. And we'll be there. Michael will be where in the world is justice. He'll be in that court.
I'll be back.
In Atlanta.
But it seems like you're all collateral damage, right? To what they alleged he was doing. And instead of bringing the case against him 4 years ago, just against him and somebody else, she goes this whole RICO thing, and we see how well that's done in YSL.
Right. I'm glad you brought up both of those, because I think it's important to look at the New York case and the Georgia case and compare them. In New York, it's only Donald Trump. So they can delay that for 4 years and it would only affect Donald Trump. In Georgia, it's a little bit different. Let's say that she comes in and argues, we can delay Donald Trump for 4 years. You can't delay the co-defendants for 4 years. We have rights to speedy trial. Like, you can't tell Mike Roman that he has to sit while Trump's case is delayed. So that would necessarily sever out Donald Trump from all the co-defendants, which is what she has vehemently opposed since the beginning, because she needs him at the table. That's how RICO works. If you don't have everybody at the table, you lose pretty much. I mean, it's the spillover effect. So I think it's really different if you look at the Georgia case versus the New York case, because you can't indefinitely suspend the prosecution of everybody else just because you need to do Donald Trump.
And you also have cameras in the courtroom in Georgia, which we can allow, but we never do in New York. So she wants that visual, I assume, of Donald Trump sitting there and she's in the courtroom and all. But the voters voted for her.
They did.
Yeah.
They voted for her, but I think it's interesting if you look at the numbers, and I don't have the exact statistics, but there were a lot of people who voted for Kamala Harris and did not vote for Fani Willis. I think it's something like 30%. She got something like 30% less votes than Kamala Harris. What that tells me is in a very Democratic county, Fulton County, people actually split the ticket and did not vote for her. So that is, of course she won. I mean, there was never going to be a Republican that won in Fulton County. Everybody knows that. But the fact that, that the voters were saying something with that. I think they were really saying something. And we heard one of the YSL jurors said that they voted during it and they didn't vote for her. I was like,
because of the case they were saddled with. Yes.
I was like, dang, like that's pretty bad.
Hey, we're going to get into YSL because we have a very special guest appearance to ask you a very pointed question. But before we do that, because we're kind of talking about this blob that is the Trump, your client case, the documents that relate to Nathan Wade's employment for that, I want to look at, and I don't normally like to do this because we got you here, but I want to look at you on the stand. Because every attorney loves to testify, so I want to look at this and get your reaction to some of it, and I like people to see how it should be done is how I'm going to phrase that. Just we can sort of talk along with this. First of all, I want people to listen to the question and how it's phrased.
Now, with respect to how the case came about, you had mentioned you didn't go to the DA's office, or excuse me, to the Attorney General's office this time, like you did on a different issue. Could you explain again why that would have been the case? Why you didn't attempt to pursue the Attorney General's office route again? So we have different remedies when the Open Records Act is not being complied with. One of them is to file a complaint with the Attorney General. There are some agencies that the Attorney General is very quick to call and help with. In fact, I think the first time I met you, I filed a complaint with the Attorney General in East Point because they were not providing any documents. The Attorney General called you, you were the city attorney at the time, and you said, oh my gosh, you're right, and I got the documents. I've learned that municipal courts respond very quickly to the Attorney General. I've learned that the Fulton County DA's office does not really care when they get a call from the Attorney General. So I could have wasted time and sent requests over and over to the Attorney General in this case, but that would have just been a waste of time.
Okay, bam, sit down, sir. We've heard just about enough.
I could see I was trying to figure out how to nicely say that Fani Willis gives zero, if the AG calls her, because I was like, how do I say I'm spinning in the wind?
What a great answer to the question.
Yeah, I mean, the guy, first of all, he's almost afraid, it seems, to ask the question because he knows what's coming. And who is that guy? Who is that attorney?
So it was really funny because after court, he's like, I didn't know if you remembered me. I was like, yeah. It's been 15 years or so. He was like the interim county attorney for this small municipality outside of Atlanta, East Point. And I remember years ago, I had asked for, I've been asking for open records forever. I asked for some open records from them, and their clerk was like, oh, we're not subject to the open records. I'm like, oh, God, please, mother of God. So I, as I have regularly done, was like, hey, Attorney General, can you send one of those little nasty grams that just says, hey, guess what? Read the law. And it did, and he got them to me, and it was fine. And I can say it happens. It happens. There are municipal court clerks or clerks somewhere that maybe weren't trained properly. I don't know. It happens. And normally we just have to call the AG, and the AG tells them, hey, guess what? You got to do this. And we get our documents, 3 days later, boom, done. That's not going to happen with the
not so much with Fani.
Have you thought about copywriting or checking to see the word nastygram and starting a company? That's a great thing. Say nastygram.
Or the Ashley Merchant rule. I think that's what Dexter Bond called it. Yeah, the Ashley Merchant rule.
Yeah, which was just deny, and thumbs down, and
deny,
obstruct.
Stick your head in the sand. Yeah, obstruct. As much as possible. And it's interesting, after that, I went back and I was looking because I was like, I know that there's been an open records case because it's actually, this is funny. It's a crime in Georgia to willingly violate the open records.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, well, someone should just send Dexter Vaughn's testimony to the Attorney General. So I went back and looked, and they actually prosecuted, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, they had a jury trial in Fulton County for the Attorney General charged with a crime, the city mayor's office, for failing to respond to open records requests. It got that bad in the city of Atlanta. And I'm like, when is it going to get that bad in Fulton County? I'm not kidding. Like that's what they need to do. I don't know if that's where it's headed, but they're not taking their responsibilities seriously. So I don't know what else they can do.
Who has to instigate that? The Attorney General?
Chris Carr, General. Yeah, the Attorney General in Georgia would be the one that has jurisdiction over an open records violation. And it's a misdemeanor. I mean, we're not talking about putting someone in prison. But, you know, in that case with the city mayor, they were not giving, and that one was like, it was stupid. It was like billing records for something, you know, some finance thing. But if they're not complying with the law and their duty is to comply with the law, someone's going to need to do something.
Yep. Every time we have this conversation, I get fired up about my law jerk license plate, which I still have not done anything with. I know. Well, you know, some things have risen to the top of the pile, and that has not been there. But I'm getting fired up again about that. What's that?
They may have a Michael Bryant rule.
I would be honored if they did, but I'm not so sure. They go, "Who in the hell is this guy?" Rule is what they have. Yeah. So, hey, on the records that she hasn't provided, I'm also assuming that there hasn't been any cash coming your way because there was supposed to be a follow-up hearing on fees, right?
There should be some. We were asked to become vendors of Fulton County, so that tells me that Fulton County will be paying the bill, not her office. So it'll be interesting to see where that comes out of the budget, but we're still waiting.
So you have actually submitted a bill.
We did. We submitted a bill, and we were already county vendors, so you know we've already received checks from Fulton County before.
So you're in the system, no big deal. And this was this rubber stamped by the court, or did they have any purview over that?
No, they didn't really have any purview over it. I mean, they had. I mean, honestly, we had been extremely fair in our bill, I think, and you know, I think the court and the county attorney saw that as well. I mean, there were things that we could have billed for. Like just for example, there were certain parties that we dismissed voluntarily. We took out all of our time for those things. You know, I mean, I feel like we were extremely fair, reduced our rate. So there wasn't really any quibbling about that.
Well, the taxpayer should be happy to pay you because at least they're getting some service to try to hold accountable an elected official.
I know. And it's, you know, it's unfortunate. It's like, it's not what we want to be doing, but how else? I mean, how else can the public get these documents? You know.
Well, what happens next? You got with the 3 suits. Where do they go next? You know, yours, Judicial Watch, and the legislature. I assume that's just waiting for an opinion from the court.
That one. So that one's different. The one, the subpoena, the Senate subpoena. I think what we're going to see, however that ruling goes, it's going to get appealed. So that's going to be tied up in the appellate courts for a while. They're going to try and drag their feet on that because, you know, delay is a great tactic. So I think that's what we're going to see here. On these open records, it is to the point that they are flagrantly violating the open records so regularly. I almost wonder if a special master or somebody may have to be appointed. So like we use different terms. The Fulton County Jail, I'll use this as an example. Years ago, the Fulton County Jail, the sheriff couldn't run it because it was so bad. And I think we're headed there again. And they were sued in federal court and they went under what's called federal receivership, which means that the federal judge appointed someone to manage the Fulton County Jail. I think that's where the Fulton County Jail is headed again. And I actually wouldn't be surprised if we saw something like that with these open records requests, where they had to actually have some outside agency, like a special master or a receiver. It's almost like a guardian. You know, you hear that term when a guardian, when someone can't do what they're supposed to do. I almost feel like someone may end up being appointed to sort of take over the open records for Fulton County. It's that bad.
How about this possibility? You know, we see what's coming January 20th. There's a very good chance this case goes away. Fani Willis just delays, and then says, well, it's moot because the case is gone.
Right. That's the thing about open records. I can be asking for stuff that you think is moot. I don't have to show relevance. So, you know, none of it, relevance doesn't matter. And she still spent the money. So almost all of these requests are about money that she's already spent, and she can't undo that.
Good. I like that answer. Yeah, because I could see her mind working that way, right?
I could too, but you know, one would have thought that would have happened long before now. And it seems as though the theory was to dig in. And once you decide to dig in, most people don't ever get out.
Hey, I saw a quote. Let me squeeze this in here, Linda. I saw a quote when a reporter had asked Fani Willis about her opinion of you.
Oh, God.
All she said was, I'll tell you exactly how I feel about Ashley Merchant. It's in my response. And it was the response to the original filing of the suit for the open records. So she didn't really say the words, but she suggested that you guys aren't going to be hanging out. So.
Yeah, I'm not going to be invited to the Christmas party, I'm sure.
Oh my goodness gracious! I don't usually, we have a lot to go ask you more about, and we don't usually do politics, but I think on this case we have to talk a little bit about politics, right? We have the new president coming in again, like him or dislike him, he's going to be our president. He's going to have a lot to say about. I don't know if there's any appointments coming up or any U.S. attorneys maybe coming up, but I think you think Fani Willis had ideas of going on, becoming a senator or a governor or something, and this was a stepping stone. And now this may be a stepping stone to getting investigated by a new administration.
Yes, I think you pegged it. I mean, I think you definitely pegged it. I think she had higher office aspirations. Originally, she's always said she wanted to be a judge. She ran for judge and lost. So that didn't work out so well. So I think she was going to try to run for maybe governor, some type of a higher public office, because in Georgia we had Stacey Abrams who ran twice unsuccessfully. So I don't think they're going to run her a third time. So I think that there's some chatter about Fani Willis being that person. And it made sense, I can tell you, at the time before all this stuff happened, because Fani Willis is a very conservative Democrat. So she's more of a moderate. So with like crime, for example, she actually is much more on the conservative side for crime. So my thought, and most people's thought, was always that she had these two prosecutions, YSL to gauge Republican support, and then the Trump case to get the Democrat support, and that was going to lead to a higher office. And that was going to sort of unify two groups that she needed, because Georgia is very divided. I mean, anybody who's watched the presidential elections, there's Atlanta and there's Georgia, and to win the governorship, you have to be able to be liked outside of Metro Atlanta area. Metro is not going to ever win the governor, at least not anytime soon. And so she needed to be able to get votes outside of that. And so I think the YSL case was supposed to help with that, that sort of larger grab. I think it's all backfired. And so I think now we're in a situation where, if someone wanted to investigate her, there is enough there to investigate her. And as we all know, if you get investigated, indicted, search warrants issued, there's something she's trying to hide, because they're issuing subpoenas. She's spending all this time and money defending against subpoenas. If you didn't have something to hide, most of the time you're just gonna, especially if you're a public officer, if you're a public officer, you're gonna give over your stuff. And she's not. So that makes me think that there's gotta be something to hide. That makes me think that a creative prosecutor could probably find enough criminal liability to get an indictment. It's not hard to get somebody indicted. It's really not.
Well, especially when you paid $1 million to the person who ended up becoming your lover. Whether it was before or after. Come on.
There are so many sloppy things if you look at the whole case. And there's a federal statute. It's called honest services fraud. And I know it's one of those statutes that is hated, but still on the books. And it was really enacted. It's kind of crazy. It was enacted for this type of situation. It was enacted for a situation where you have a public official that is robbing the taxpayers of the honest services of that elected official. And that is it's when there's not really a bribery, it's when they're mismanaging money. And paying her lover a lot of money for a job he wasn't qualified for, paying some of it out of forfeiture money, which you're not supposed to do, the block billing, all that stuff. If you had a creative federal prosecutor, I think that they could get an indictment.
Is there any doubt in your mind that if she ever provided the materials we're talking about, that it would seal her fate, that it would just, is there any doubt?
No, there's no doubt in my mind. The one thing that I think why she's fighting so hard on with the Senate is her phone records. I think her phone records are going to show that there were some things that weren't completely accurate on the stand. And I kind of got that sense, when I was questioning the witnesses. You know how it is. You guys are trial lawyers. When you're questioning a witness, you sort of pick up their language. And if a witness is not telling the truth, sometimes they won't directly answer the question. And you may have to ask them 3 or 4 times. And I always do this. You'll notice it when I'm questioning someone, I'll say, okay, I'm going to ask you again. Okay, I'm going to ask you again. And, it's like if I ask you a question and if I ask you if the sky is, is the sky blue? Oh, the sky is gorgeous. I didn't answer your question, you know, and maybe the reason I didn't answer your question is because I don't want to lie about the, you know, the answer. And so if you keep avoiding the answer, and I picked up cues on that about certain things I was asking. And what I mean by that is I think it came down to cohabitation, for example. One of the big issues we were fighting on was, did you all live together? Well, in my mind, I was looking at the base legal definition. If you had sex in the same bed that you slept in, under the legal definition in Georgia for domestic violence, for example, that means cohabitation. So I was using that definition, and I think we were kind of mincing words because they had separate residences. You know, when did the relationship start? Okay. I think they were defined relationship. I think it may have been a friends with benefits sort of thing. So I think we had a lot of semantics being cut with those things. And I think once the phone records are actually provided, we're going to see that they were being very, very strategic with their use of words. They may not have been completely accurate.
You mean, I could say it. Maybe lying, prevaricating, not telling the truth. You know, one of the things that we have learned from this Luigi Mangione case is that the public is really aware, you know, because of healthcare. But even in these kind of cases, of those three words that he used, which has really incited this discussion of delay, deny, depose, right? That happens in cases such as this also. Delay, deny, and then, you know, you end up in a court suit, but you still, you know, you don't tell the truth.
Right. That's what we have in these open records, like the January 6th documents, you know, that the Freedom Watch group asked for. Initially, deny, we have no records. Then they're like, oh yeah, we have them, but they're privileged. You know, that was after deny and defend didn't work. So they denied at first, then they defended, they didn't answer the lawsuit. And then now they're finally saying, oh yeah, well, we have them, but you can't have them.
So in that case, would they have a some sort of in-camera review of them, or some sort of third party that would determine whether there truly is a privilege?
That's what I think that's headed for. I think they're headed for some type of a special master, which is what we would see if there was like attorney-client privilege. And that's what they're claiming. I don't even know if they've identified the documents. I sort of still feel like they're just throwing excuse after excuse. But yeah, if I were Judge McBurney, I would be like, I don't believe a word out of your mouth. So get the documents, put them in a room, and we're going to have a special master appointed who's going to go and review those documents. 100%.
Well, maybe that Judge McBurney will want Dexter Q. Bond to come in and testify.
Mr. Bond.
He did in your case, Mr. Bond, and it wasn't James. You know? Here's the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room in this case is race, right? I saw that watching the comments when you were doing the cross-examination of Fani Willis, and you know, and it was like, well, it's race. They're trying to take down the black woman. You know, as you know, and Michael.
So easy, so lazy.
I'm a Democrat. I mean, I'm been involved in civil rights for a long time. I don't see that here, but people do. So how do you handle that issue when you're dealing with these records requests and other people saying, well, you're going after Fani because she's risen to the top?
Right. And that is an unfortunate thing to have to defend against. You know, it's not anything that's ever factored into my process. I have sued people regardless of color. You know, we have filed open records lawsuits against every different race there is. You know, it has absolutely nothing to do with race. But that's one of the things that if that is raised, how do you defend against it? I mean, it's one of the best things for someone to pull. Oh, you're doing this just because you're a woman. Oh, you're doing this just because of race. I mean, how do you prove that you're not doing it because of race? Look at the history. And the one thing I can tell you, and this is what always, you know, I always go back to, we always have our reputation. And everybody who knows me and everybody in the state of Georgia legal community, national legal community, they know that there was nothing racial about this. And I know everybody knows that. So it didn't really bother me in that respect. I don't like that it clouds the issues, you know, because it's really just smoke and mirrors. It's really just trying to deflect from the actual issues. But, you know, I mean, what else do you do? You know, if you have nothing else, I mean, I guess you pull that, you say it's racist.
Yeah. Just so lazy. Hey, before we move on to other stuff, and we talked a little bit about YSL, we had a guest on that had a question for you. Okay. So this ought to be interesting visually just because it's a similar format to we're looking at right now. And I'm going to be combining, I think there's going to be a lot of Lindas and a lot of me's. So Let's see if I can find this very recent clip here. Let's see.
Like the
Here we
Matrix.
go. Here we go. So yeah, the setup here is it relates to you and Fani. I'll leave it at that. Okay.
I think, she's thumbed her nose one too many times at Ashley Merchant. And by the way, to ask her about something in the YSL when you have her on.
Okay.
Her client, Martinez Arnold, was supposed to be a witness.
Right.
He goes by Duke. And I think it's pretty clear. And by the way, his testimony was pretty relevant to the remaining defendants because my client was involved with something with Martinez Arnold that came into our case. So, I mean, I was really surprised they didn't bring him, but I don't think they wanted any piece of Ashley Merchant. Honest to God.
That's powerful. Yeah, that is powerful.
Ask her about that.
Okay, so we're asking you about that.
I mean, they didn't call him. So, I had a job to do and I was going to do it. And I was not going to make it easy. I think what we saw with a lot of other witnesses was the state trying to call them and manhandle them, get them to talk about things that were outside of their plea agreement. And that was just not going to happen. I mean, I had I was going to control that situation and make sure my client was protected. I'm very protective of clients. So I don't like to let other people handle it. I mean, I had made sure I'd done everything I could to make sure that the judge knew I was the one that needed to be there. And, Adrian Love had indicated several times that, they can just have a fill-in. I was not playing that game. There is no fill-in. This, just put that in perspective. This case is huge. I mean, there is so much in here. And so to try and say that my client, and I'm not saying there couldn't be another lawyer that could do it, but it would be so much work for them to gain all the knowledge that I've had over this case over the last 3 years and my relationship with my client to be able to go in and defend him. And Adrian Love was literally like, can John just go? And John's like, no. No. Like, it was crazy. And there was no need. This case had been going on for so long. I'm available, we're available most of the time. There were literally just tiny little time limits as to when I was on trial and other cases are unavailable. And it was like they wanted to call him when I wasn't available. And it was crazy because that's what they kept doing. They kept sending me these dates and I'm like, I'm not available these dates. Like there's very few dates I'm not available. Why are you trying to call my client when I can't be there? And I think Doug, I think he nailed it. And I mean, my client did not want to testify without me there. I didn't feel like somebody could adequately protect him in the time we had. Not saying someone else couldn't do the job, just someone else couldn't get caught up to speed, that quickly. And look at what happened. I mean, Woody had a fill-in lawyer, both great lawyers, but that's what happens when someone is out sick, do you want your surgeon operating on you? They're out sick and then you get the fill-in that hasn't looked at your records? No. No, I'm going to wait till my surgeon's available, and so that's sort of the same thing. And there's no reason not to. So, I mean, I think that's definitely what was going to happen. And I'll tell you, though, the thing why I don't think they called him is we had a very tight plea deal. He only had certain things that he could offer, and he didn't help them. I mean, I know if he had talked about other stuff, he could have, but there was no way I was going to let him talk about anything other than that little tight section. And, it's just too risky. I don't trust them. They locked up witnesses for lying. They refer people, they re-indict you when you have double jeopardy claims, and then they keep you in jail without bond. I don't know. I'm not trusting them. So
yeah, it's not like they didn't put other witnesses on that didn't help them, but right. I don't know if they do that going in or not.
And let everybody know, Ashley, how long your client was on standby to testify. And then you wrote a letter just before they said, they may call him. Yeah. And when that was in relation to how long you had been waiting to go on
standby we had been on standby the entire time up until the first time I heard from them was last summer. So in the summer, they're like, hey, we need to talk to your client, but not any specific time. Hey, he's coming up. And I'm like, okay, can you give me an idea when? And I get that trials, you don't know exactly when you're going to call, but generally when you're going to call, you can give me you can say this week. And so, that was in the summer. And then we got to, it's September, and then it was October, and then it was November. And I'm like, I mean, you can't just have us on call indefinitely. to me, that showed that they didn't actually have a plan, because most of the time prosecutors have a map of how they plan on proving their case, when they plan on bringing in certain evidence. And there's reasons, and you guys get this, there's reasons, because you have hearsay objections, there's chain of custody. You have to bring certain witnesses to establish foundation for later witnesses. So if you actually had a plan for a trial, you would know when you were calling my client. The fact that they had absolutely no idea tells me they had absolutely no plan.
Shocking.
And what
So-
was, I'm sorry, Michael. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to know what the letter was that she said. What the letter was that she said.
Oh yeah. Okay. So the one I think that he was mostly talking about. So there was a witness who was not under subpoena, and he told them, he would come, but he wasn't under subpoena, and they went and they got a material witness warrant for him and had him locked up to testify. And how they got it was they told the judge that he was evading service as a subpoena. That is illegal. We do not have material witness warrants in Georgia. We only have them for out-of-state witnesses. So they used a statute. They cited a statute to get that court order for a defendant on bond who doesn't show up for court. So they said, because the statute says we can arrest you if you don't show up for court, that's for a criminal defendant on bond who has a legal duty to show up. But the judge issued an arrest warrant and that guy went to jail. And so I wrote a letter and said, you arrested this guy illegally. You can be sued. And here's the case that says you can be sued. You're not doing this to my client. So I wanted to make sure the judge knew that if they brought one of those illegal warrants, don't arrest my client, because we are not evading service and it's illegal. And I mean, they presented that, they got that guy arrested, and it was completely illegal. It's insane.
They didn't have you representing that guy, unfortunately.
Right.
So-
Or the judge educated. I mean,
Well,
went in and
Well,
educated
yeah,
the judge.
that's what a shocker that is too, judge not knowing the law.
I know.
So,
The prosecutors to tell the truth. You read a motion and they say, oh, this statute says this, and you think the statute says that. I'm like, I go and read the statute. I don't trust anybody.
so how's Duke now? And because there are still, I think, as of today, 5 defendants remaining, there is some case left. What's the status?
He's great. He's completed 2 years of probation. We're hoping that the judge will let him off probation, so that he can travel freely and stuff, because he wants to get back to making music and doing all the stuff that he does. And it's, he really shouldn't be on probation anymore. What's crazy about his charges, and, I think it's better to kind of break it down so that everyone understands what he actually is even charged with. So the situation that Doug was just talking about with his client, that happened in 2015. Duke pled guilty in 2015, got time served, did probation, did first offender probation, successfully completed that, and was exonerated. Okay, so he finished that. Then they bring up the reason that they were able to strap him in under this RICO was rap lyrics. So they did rap lyrics and social media posts. So there was no new crime. There was no he did something else. It was overt acts, non-criminal overt acts. So what extended the statute of limitations and what got around double jeopardy were these non-criminal overt acts, social media posts and lyrics. So for him, why is he on probation again? The crime was from 2015. He did his time. I want him done. I want him free from this. It's just, the government doesn't need to have their claws in him this long. It's crazy.
Was that imposed by Glanville?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, and he denied my double jeopardy motion. I made that same argument to him, and he was like, "Oh, well, those overt acts with the lyrics. You get around double jeopardy, no protection." And he wouldn't give him a bond. And I'm like, how can the actual criminal act? He got probation, and you won't give him a bond now. And the only new facts are these lyrics. The only new facts are the lyrics. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Let me you meant bond, because one of the things that we've seen during the trial is the Justice Department report came out, which you've been telling us about, Rice Street. But I did remember, Michael, why I had written down the word dentist, and it wasn't because I did.
Yes, I'm glad you're getting to that. I was getting up to that. Go ahead.
I'll let you go there. But before the show, Ashley, I said, I have it in my notes here, dentist, and I don't remember why.
You thought you had a dentist appointment?
Because I had a dentist appointment. Why to Ashley? Because I had all these notes and questions to ask you, and then now I remember it was because of the veneer guy, the dentist that's in Rice Street. What's happening with that?
Is he out?
Bond. Yes, he finally got a bond. He got a bond, but this is interesting. He got a bond, but they're trying to take all his stuff. So how they're talking about YSL and the forfeiture?
The forfeiture, yeah.
So the dental veneer guy, I think we figured out why he's being prosecuted. They have taken all his stuff, they went in his house, they raided his house, they've got TVs, they're taking all his stuff. Yep.
But I mean, why? I mean, they just want his stuff.
Proceeds of the crime, because his job. They're saying his job was to do these veneers was a crime, and so any stuff that he bought, purchased, they're saying is proceeds of the crime. Yeah, yeah.
And so, for those that don't remember, this is a defendant now, not a dentist, licensed dentist, but a guy who was doing veneer work for his patients. Yeah, so he was basically arrested for improperly providing dental services, I guess, when he's not a dentist. And for that, you go into Rice Street without bond. How long was he in there?
I don't know. He was, I think it was at least a month, because it takes that long just to get a hearing. And he had a pretty high bond. And I mean, he's doing dental veneers.
It's a nonviolent crime.
It's a nonviolent crime, and he is publicizing it. That's what I don't get. Like, if you are literally advertising what you're doing, you're not hiding anything. How do you think he's this criminal mastermind? Like, he's not hiding it. He clearly thought it was legal what he was doing. Honestly, I don't know that it's illegal. I mean, I'd have to go research it. Who knew? I didn't know you couldn't do dental veneers without a dental whatever degree.
You're not drilling anything, I guess. You're just gluing stuff on. I don't know.
I don't know. Like, if you think about it, there's people doing Botox, there's people doing injections of just about everything, and they're not doctors. Like, is that really?
You go to see your doctor, you don't see your doctor, you see a nurse practitioner or something.
That's right, or physician's assistant. Yeah, that's really annoying as well.
Alleyway. This isn't like some alleyway dental thing where you have to like slip some guy cash, so it's an illegal transaction, and you have to know the code to the back door. I mean, this was like a business that he registered. Clearly, he thinks it's legal, but this is what we're prosecuting. And it makes sense because they're trying to take all the stuff, so they need money.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So they're going to sell his TV so they can put it in the forfeiture fund, and then Fani Willis can use it to pay Nathan Wade or her legal expenses. Okay, this makes sense to me.
He got $100,000 out of the forfeiture funds, so
he did.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm pretty sure that's illegal. So I think that's one of the things they'll be investigating. Yeah, his first $100,000 came out of the forfeiture funds. Wow. You're not supposed to pay for legal counsel out of those funds. So, but now those funds are depleted. So, they got to get this.
Is Nathan wearing a Richard Mille watch by any chance? Is
and driving some fancy cars. I don't know.
Richard Mille. Richard Mille.
I said I can't even afford to say the name right, so that's where I am.
Right. Oh,
yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, no one cares. No one seems to care, because it seems to me the Attorney General should come right down and look at that office right now and say, "Where is that Richard Mille watch?"
I would want to see where are all the cars. Where is everything? And that, one of the things that I was trying to get in open records was the records of forfeiture. That's one of the things I'm still asking for. And they've got to keep those records, but they're not giving them.
Was that a separate request?
That was part of my lawsuit.
That was part of the other one. Okay. All right.
For those that don't know what we're talking about, in the YSL case, when they raided Jeffrey Williams' home, there were several Richard Mille watches. There was a pink one that was last seen on the hands, on the wrist of, or being held by
the burrito.
Viverito, who was translated. I understand the reason why she got the burrito name is because the AI that did the translation from investigated burrito. That's how it happened. And then there was another watch that supposedly a Richard Mille watch that was put on. It was actually in I guess it was like a golfing name watch, along with it. And it was put on the shelf, and it's worth about $500,000. And it seems to be missing in action.
Wow.
That's in my French. So that's for those of us who don't know.
And who's going to hold them accountable for that?
We're hoping you.
Yeah.
We're hoping you. So do you have any questions for Doug?
Oh my God.
All right, we're going to ask you. This is the hard part. Give us a question for Doug Weinstein, and give us a question for Max Shart, who also was on the show with the Shaq Kokomo. Was what we call our fine episode.
I love them both. So I want to get them more involved in GACTL, the criminal defense organization. So, and Doug, this was his first criminal trial. So I want to know it. So I always love this when people come from civil over to criminal. How do you compare the two? Give us your thoughts on how you compare when you're fighting over someone's money and property versus someone's life. You know, do you think the rules are fair? Do you think they're equal? I love hearing civil lawyers once they've taken a dip into the criminal world, because they're usually like, oh my God, we have so many more protections in the civil world than we do the criminal. So I'm curious about his thoughts on that. And Max, oh my God, Max is awesome. I don't know how Max, I mean, like, he's great. I love Max. He was, you know, he and I used to work at the public defender together. He, in Fulton County, public defender.
That's got to be an education.
Yep. Oh yeah. So I'm curious what's next for Max. You know, what is next for him? What's big on the horizon? Because I think there's going to be big things on the horizon.
He did say he took a whole day off after the case. So, yeah.
I mean, I get it. I mean, I saw him when they were in the middle of trial. I saw him run into other courtrooms. I'm like, how do you do it?
Yep.
I would say another question though for Max is, after the YSL case, if you could make one change to the law in Georgia, what would it be? One change.
Great question. Great question.
Good question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great question.
We'll get back to you on that.
Can't wait.
With Max again. Yeah. So what's going on with you now? I mean, other these things to some degree are sort of winding down. The big battles have occurred, and even if some aren't complying with court orders, what's happening? What's going on? What's next?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the RICO case, because that case could either completely go away or it could become, massive again. And so it's always hard as a criminal defense lawyer to keep that in the balance. Am I going to have to go try that RICO case in Fulton County, or is it going to go away? So I have to sort of manage my case count appropriately to make sure that I'm available to do that. So I got to do that. But I'll say December is really a great month because it's just kind of chill. We don't really have jurors usually, so not a lot's going on. But January is one of those months for criminal lawyers where it's like everybody has court. Everybody has court. So I hate Januaries because it's good for business, but it's crazy how much we're in court in January, because everybody, they get their case count. The judges get their case counts at the end of the year, and they always, yep, they always want to know. But one of the things that I'm really trying to focus on is how to educate lawyers using the YSL case. We're trying to do some CLE, some continuing legal education. We're trying to actually do some non-legal stuff to use that, because it is a treasure trove of information that we don't always have. We have videos. We have, how often do you cross a snitch? Do you cross a gang expert? Do you have, lawyers arrested? Like, you literally have every law issue that could come up in that trial. So we're going to try and come up with some pretty cool educational tools using it.
So Ashley, I was in Georgia in 2019, just pre the pandemic.
I remember you.
When I came back, right? And look, but I tried a little case called Phil Spector. You may have heard of it.
Yes.
We had the posters here. I had the hung jury. The second lawyer screwed up and Philip got convicted. But I was watching Mr. Atkins, and Michael Bryan knows what's coming. I don't think he's got these ready to go because I didn't tell him about that. And I don't know if you saw the beginning of Mr. Atkins closing in the YSL case, or whether you were, busy doing other things.
Yeah,
right?
no, I saw some of it. Yeah.
And he put up a slide. He started with the slide, right? A PowerPoint. And it said, "Seek the truth." And it was a blue slide. And I said to myself, I have seen that slide before. Maybe a little different coloration of blue, but I've seen those words before. And it turns out that's my first slide with a little different coloration of blue in the Phil Spector case. When I told the jury this was how to seek the truth, and I put up then the slide with Phil and the coat not having any blood spatter on it to seek the truth. I just jumped out of my seat. Not only did I feel the YSL prosecution was fraught with inequities, I said to myself, is there also a theft here in terms of an idea? Now, maybe it's just flattery.
I think it was probably flattery.
Flattery.
I've seen that.
Usually you say something and this is, right? It's like a photograph that's taken. So I'll post those again.
You should definitely post it. It went a lot better for you than it did for me. So whether or not he gave you credit, you can take peace in the fact that it went a lot better for you.
That's great.
The concept is solid.
What the jury thought when they were like, "Seek the truth."
Yeah. Where are we?
Okay.
Yeah.
We did. They sought the truth.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll have fun watching though. There's another RICO case, coming down the pipe in Fulton County, the Cop City. I don't know if you guys have followed that Cop City that they're building.
Yes,
it's a RICO case. Yep, Fulton County.
tell everybody about that because most people.
Yeah, I am not involved because when we were asked, I was like, you can only have so many RICO cases at a time. We are RICO maxed. At the time, they're huge cases. But that case is all of the protesters from there's a training facility in Atlanta that the city bought. And it's basically this forest that they're trying to turn into a huge training center. So you've got a lot. It's going to be like a sociology problem or a sociology class in the making watching the trial, because you've got environmental activists, you've got Black Lives Matter activists and defund the police activists that were very against this training facility because they think the police are too militarized here. So, but then you've got the people about the forest who don't want the forest wrecked for this training facility. So you've got a lot of different personalities and they're protesting, and things happened during the protest and they have indicted everybody for RICO for acts of some crazy protesters, some not so crazy protesters all across the board, but everybody's sort of thrown in together. Organizers, people who were just there, save the trees, like just about everybody. And that case it's going to be crazy because it involves so many different, very polarized opinions. But it's RICO.
Michael, you're going to spend a lot of time. Michael Bryant's going to be spending a lot of time with Where in the World is Justice, I think.
In Fulton County.
Rico? Where is our friend Rico?
Where is so what's the harm there? What's the alleged harm in that case?
Well, there were some violent acts. There were definitely some violent acts that happened with the police. There was some destruction of property. The biggest issue has been them not letting them continue building it, just actually physically obstructing, not moving, things like that.
So chaining themselves to trees and things. Okay.
Typical protest stuff. Yeah, typical protesting. But I just think it's going to be an interesting case politically because there's so many different viewpoints that are going to be clashing in very interesting ways. Yeah. I'm glad I'm not a lawyer on the case. That's one I'm really glad I'm going to be an observer on.
Yeah, we'll be calling on you for the expertise on RICO when that thing comes back to life. Hey, I was reading a comment the other day, somebody suggesting that there were so many, the way they phrased it, new laws that were going to come out of the YSL case. And I said, well, unless something is taken to appeal, I'm not sure a law is going to be generated. But from your perspective, what are the things that either are going to come from YSL or should come from YSL that we've learned over this year plus in trial?
I strongly believe there are going to be some laws that come out of it. I think that we're going to see some guardrails put in on RICO. Our RICO is very broad, which means it's dependent upon prosecutors reining in their own discretion. I think we're going to see some guardrails on that. I think we also last term we had the lyrics bill. So there's a bill that New York passed it. You all have it. California passed it. A lot of places have been passing it. And a lot of music artists support it. They have a really good lobby for it to ban the use of rap lyrics in criminal cases. We had it last term in Georgia introduced. It was defeated in part because Fani Willis fought it. She had it defeated before all of this new stuff came about. So I don't think she's going to quite have the clout she had last year to defeat it. So I think that we'll see that reintroduced in Georgia and hopefully make some headway because I think most people support it and think it's a good bill. Yeah. And I think, with the Trump case and all the funding issues we've seen, I think we're going to see some tightening of the purse strings, which, anytime you tighten purse strings, you're going to see some changes in policy. If Fani Willis doesn't have this huge budget without any controls, you're going to see her hopefully focusing on the crime that matters to the citizens of Fulton County. Do they feel comfortable in their homes? Can you go to the shopping mall without armed guards? I mean, things like that. Can you walk down the streets? The stuff that the citizens seem to care more about. Hopefully you'll see a reallocation of resources back to that.
Well, let's hope because you just do yeoman's work. And of course, I'm not going to ignore your husband, John, too, who's also a fabulous lawyer.
and that's what's crazy. Like I couldn't do the open record stuff without John because he does civil. And, that's why when they just deny and defend in these open records, a lot of times it's criminal lawyers asking for it. And if we don't do civil, what's our remedy? You know, you saw how effective it is to call the attorney general. You know, you played that clip. Like, there's not a whole lot of remedies. And, you know, so I'm really lucky I couldn't do it if he wasn't able to do those types of lawsuits.
Yeah.
It's a good team. It's a good team. Yeah. Yeah. When you guys got together, were you both doing civil, or were you always criminal and he was always civil?
Oh my God, that's so funny. We actually met in law school.
Okay.
Yeah, we met in law school. And it's funny because he actually wanted to do criminal, and then he went to a firm and was doing civil and just liked civil. And we wanted to sort of merge the two. And what's crazy is there's a lot of civil rights cases, like a lot, especially as you can imagine the Fulton County Jail. And his practice really developed from the Fulton County Jail. I was a public defender in Fulton County, and people were dying, being stabbed, going to prison. They shouldn't have gone to prison. I mean, the first, you know, decade or so that he was in private practice, not at the firm, it was almost all suing Fulton County. And, you know, a lot of my knowledge of how Fulton County works comes from those lawsuits, because we would be in the jail going through massive document reviews, seeing how everything is processed in Fulton County. It's insane though. I mean, we have sued the Fulton County clerk for sending people to prison that shouldn't have been sent to prison, for miscalculating sentences. Like, we had a lady who, she was given probation. She was given 5 years probation, and they checked the box on prison instead of probation. And she literally went to prison for 2 years. And yeah.
Wow.
And John represented her and got her, you know, a nice civil settlement. We've represented a gentleman who was in jail on someone else's warrant, someone else's charges. And he kept saying this awful, kept saying, it's not me. They said, well, you must be mentally ill. So they shipped him off. No, they shipped him off to our mental hospital.
My
Medicated him, and the psychiatrist, after he was forced medicated, called the judge and said, I actually think he's telling the truth. Get someone down here to do a fingerprint analysis to see if he's the right person. And he was not the right person. 9 months later. Yeah.
That is like a bad story. You know, you hear that, you know, you'd never believe it. Like fiction,
how
like
long do you
somebody
have?
who's committed, and then they can't convince people that either they're doing it undercover or they're, you know, they're not legitimately there, but now you're there and you can't get the hell out.
Schizophrenic. He's not, you know,
Wow.
saying he's not him. Clearly he's lying. Nobody listened to him. I mean, it's like, I wish I only had a couple stories. I mean, I wish I didn't have any, but there's so many. So it's, you know, our work in Fulton County is definitely deep.
And everyone thought One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was just a movie, right? With Nurse Ratched and Jack Nicholson. You can't get out. That's an incredibly horrible story.
It's awful. It's
brutal.
awful. It's I mean, the worst one is a gentleman he represented who died in the Fulton County Jail, and his charges had been dismissed. He shouldn't have been there. They were dismissed. He was there 3 months longer than he was supposed to be, but he was mentally ill. And so he didn't really even understand, honestly. But, you know, in his early 20s, his mom was calling around looking for him because he hadn't come home. And that's how she found out he died. He was put in with a really violent guy who was charged with murder. And within an hour of being placed in the cell with that guy in the Fulton County Jail, he was dead.
Oh my God. I
Jeez.
can't even.
So it sounds like your practices kind of overlap in that way.
Very
You know?
much.
So that's great. That's worked so well. Was that by design, or it just happened?
I mean, it happened, but then, you know, it sort of became by design. You know, we decided we wanted to utilize both of our skills. And I mean, one of the things is we want to make change. I mean, that's always been a driving force. You know, we want to make change. So with these civil rights cases, we're able to get injunctive relief. And, you know, I don't know this, like, I don't know the civil litigation like John does, but I tend to know the facts on the ground and talk with the witnesses and know the process. And so I'm able to sort of recommend some injunctive relief, which is really when we're telling police departments or jails, you need to change things. You need to change policies and procedures. So.
Wow. And I asked Doug a question. I'm going to ask you the same kind of question. It's like, with all this going on, and you're doing this, you know, 24/7, whether it's on one case or 2 cases or 100 cases, how do you maintain, and can you let the public understand what type of toll it takes that you have to maintain that private relationship, that family relationship with your children, with your animals, with holidays, with seeing your mom, with seeing your dad? How do you do that? And tell the public what happens.
I definitely have a lot of animals. We have 5 dogs. No, cute ones, wonderful dogs. You know, I am good about when I need it to be shut off, shutting it off. And I think it's important for people to always sort of establish those boundaries. I don't usually work on the weekends unless I'm on trial. And so, I try to make sure that I balance it. And, everybody gets a sense, like if I've been neglectful of my health, or I've been neglectful of my marriage or my kids or whatever it is, my house, whatever, that. And you just have to consciously know, I need to spend the afternoon on Saturday with my kids, because it's been a rough week, something like that. And you just have to give yourself that grace, and you have to say, I know I need that. I know they need that. And so that's the most important thing right now. And I just make sure that I do that because, we get to a point where we start losing people in this profession. And I hate it, but I'm at that point where I lose people. There are people that last week, a great criminal defense lawyer that I know died. And, you have to always know that, like, life is not work. So if you need to take the afternoon off to spend with your kids, take the afternoon off to spend with your kids. And I do that. And I don't have any problem with it.
What's the age range of the kids now? Because things get very different.
Oh my God. So I have a freshman in high school and a junior in high school. So 2 teenage girls.
Okay. Yeah. You got your hands full.
Yeah, they're busy. Yeah. Now that the one can drive, it's like it's totally changed now that I have a driver in the house who wants to go get stuff, that is life changing. So that I can say is a big difference. But they're busy, and I always make sure I'm at their events. They know that they come first. I always file leaves of court whenever my kids have breaks, and I advocate for lawyers to do that, because our mental health and our personal health is important.
Yeah, family first.
You can do that here. Most states don't have that, filing leave of court, and it's really ridiculous. You can go called into trial. You'll send a letter. You may have a case and say, look, I'm having this done or that done. I can't be there. And they say, oh, tough cookies. Schedule for another time.
I know. It is crazy to me how I think it's because not a lot of lawyers go to court. So those of us that do go, we don't maybe fight as well for ourselves. But it's crazy that the rules are like that. That any other job you can take a day off, and in litigation, you have to ask every judge for permission to take a day off, and they have to know why you're taking the day off. It's crazy to me.
That's the worst part, right? Excuse me, Judge, could I see you in chambers? And then they get embarrassed. Okay, all of a sudden the male judges then get embarrassed that they asked you, right?
Oh, I make it painful for them.
No.
I'm like, no. Oh yes. Well, and then the opposing counsel can object, and so you see, it's hard sometimes to be challenging to people like Fani Willis, because you don't want to make people mad because they can object to your leave. Crazy. Yeah.
Well, I think it's an amazing career you've developed and continue, and I hope you don't mind if we continue to follow you and check in with you as we can on some of these cases. I would imagine after the first of the year, we're going to see something of importance happen with either one of these cases ending, or, as you suggest, maybe ramping up, depending on the reaction to some of the motions that are now pending.
I think that's what we'll see. So yeah, that's kind of what I imagine is next, but we'll see.
Well, we're going to be following the whole extravaganza.
Before you go, though, is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you want to get out there?
I don't think so. I just love that everybody's engaged in the legal system. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's, we talked about that in the terms of YSL, how as bad as it has been, so many people became invested in that case, and they're now going through withdrawal. And at a certain point, it became about much more than the merits of the case. It should always be about the merits, but in this case, there was such weird stuff happening that people just got engaged. And most people can tell in their gut right from wrong, and they see the stuff playing out like they did. And they got invested in it. So I would not be surprised to see a few would-be lawyers have developed from watching this case.
And it's like you get really invested in the personalities too. That was one thing. It's almost like an ongoing TV show where the characters have been developed, and the lawyers, you saw some really good lawyering from the defense, but you got to know them, because they were involved for so long. So I think that it was like a reality TV show almost, a reality Lincoln lawyer drama, acting out in real life, but these are real personalities. And so I think people really got invested in that. So, I love it. I think that the more light that's shined on the criminal legal system, the better. The more people know, because they vote, laws change. Hopefully we get better laws every year.
Yeah. That reminds me, I'll throw in a story here. I go down there to the courthouse, and it's now Whitaker time. Okay, so I'm there after Glanville. So I get in, and first of all, it's a big courtroom. It's kind of church-like. It's just very weirdly set up, that courtroom. And I look across, I go, oh my gosh, there's Brian Steele, and there's Jeffrey Williams, and there's Max Shard, and there's I'm like seeing these folks that I've been watching like anybody else for months, and now I'm on the set, as it were, of this show. So it was amazing. And then I sit down, and almost immediately I start talking with somebody who's on this. I didn't have a press credential for that one because we did the Where in the World is Justice so quickly. I didn't have one, so I'm sitting with the public, and turns out I'm next to Yak Gotti, Diamante Kendrick's mom. Yep. And so we're chatting, and there's a break. Doug comes over, probably because he sees me talking with Tosh, and we had done one interview at that point when I was actually kind of en route. So he comes over, and I'm ready to, hey, goodness. He has no idea who I am. He has no clue who this guy is that's sitting there talking with his client's mom. So it was a proud moment for me. But the courtroom was just, it was like a TV set. Very interesting.
Like, and you felt you were invested, like the characters had been developed. I mean,
yeah. And I was still sizing up Judge Whitaker at the time because she was relatively new, and we knew how much she deferred to Glanville's interesting decisions. So I still was on the fence about her. I fell over on her side since then. Yeah. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, sorry to get off on that tangent.
No, I knew it was relevant to what I had said about all the characters, and I think people do feel a loss right now because it's like, oh, the show ended.
Yeah.
Except today a motion was filed. I see that Jeffrey Williams filed a motion to be relieved of his probation for the purpose of Christmas time and the holidays. He wants to come into Metro Atlanta to be with his family and all for the next few weeks. So I think we're going to see that probation thing maybe whittled away as we go on, especially after the not guilty verdict.
Yeah, you mentioned that, Linda, and maybe Ashley, will Judge Whitaker, she's retaining jurisdiction to deal with those probation questions, right?
She is. So she's going to be the one that hears all of that. Yes. So we lucked out. We have
good
her.
For him. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Okay.
And if any other trials happen. But I think we'll see very different trials because it seems like Adam Abate is going to be the one trying them. So I think the state.
And he seems pretty good. He seems pretty normal.
Try a case. You can try a case.
Okay, good. When normal is what you're hoping for, I'm not sure about that, but normal will be a good start. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ashley, thank you again so much. It's always a pleasure to share some time with you.
Yeah, happy holidays. And so
happy holidays. Husband, Merry Christmas. And say hello to John, and you guys keep fighting the good fight.
All right. Good to see y'all. Thank you.
Take care.
We'll see you soon.
Bye. All righty then. So happy holidays and Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas is making a comeback, I understand.
It's always been here in New York City.
New York,
we call it the Rockefeller Christmas Center
tree. There was kind of this unwritten pressure that, don't say Merry Christmas unless you know enough about whom you're talking to. It was always like Happy Holidays. I say Merry Christmas.
You don't live in New York City, where there's a lot of people who don't celebrate Christmas. So I like to say everything. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, have everything. Okay, my husband is Jewish. Happy Hanukkah.
How about Kwanzaa?
But he says Merry Christmas. I love Kwanzaa. I love Kwanzaa. I love Boxing Day.
Boxing Day. That's the 26th. That's the 26th. And in Canada, too. Also in Canada.
They give presents. I love presents. Oh
in boxes, I'm guessing.
In boxes? What are you getting me for Christmas?
I don't know. I thought we should go out and just have a holiday dinner of sorts. Get our significant others to do that. So start working on that. Look at your calendar. All righty then. A good visit. Looks like our time is up. I'm Michael Bryant. So try to do the right thing.
And I'm Linda Kenny Bodden. And together we are Justice Served TV. And if you like us, please subscribe, like, share, and hit that notify button. And we'll see you next time.